Can you hear me?
Hey, was anything due today? Anybody know?
I think there was a quiz due yesterday.
I already did that. I was wondering if there was like anything in class due. All right, cool.
Hey everybody, welcome back to class. So as you're coming in today, I'm just going to ask that you put your name, first and last name, in the chat box. I'm going to use that as a sign-in sheet. We do have an activity that we'll do in class today, but for now, I want to make sure that I give everybody credit for being here.
Did I miss this step last class, or is this the first time we're doing this?
This is the first time we're doing this.
Oh, okay.
If I have an activity that you'll do, then I don't need to have a sign-in sheet, but if we don't get the activity turned in, then I want to make sure that I give you credit for being here. So I just want to check in with you guys real quick before we get too deep into what we're talking about today. Has everybody gotten a chance to finish the introduction speech? Everybody had a chance to introduce their classmate? Okay, we didn't miss anybody in this class, did we? Everybody that's here today had a chance to introduce their classmate. Okay. All right, and the other thing I want to ask, did everybody who's here today get a chance to sign up for the informative speech? Everybody sign up for the informative speech? You have your speech topic chosen. All right. I am going to kind of help get you guys ready. Remember, the draft of the speech is due when? When is the draft due?
Sunday.
Right on. Okay, last class had some questions about that. So I just want to make sure you guys are familiar that the draft is due on Sunday, because some of you are going to be speaking on Tuesday. So I want to help those who are speaking on Tuesday feel prepared for it. I am going to be sharing with you guys an informative speech that we can evaluate. So hopefully that is helpful to you to see a student's speech, and we'll get some feedback on that. And we are also going to talk a little bit about informative speaking. So in case you're still developing your ideas, hopefully you are still developing your ideas, that you can get some insight on how to do that. Now, before we get started, does anybody have any questions about their particular speech? Like their topic, maybe how they'll develop that?
Tony, I have a question for the outline.
Sure.
Since it's just a draft, for Sunday, does it have to be super formal? Like, can we capitalize some words we want to emphasize? Is that okay?
So it is a draft, and it doesn't need to be terribly formal. I definitely want to be able to give you feedback on like the right and wrong way to do it. So if you want me to kind of give you the feedback that you need for that, I would try to do it based on how you're going to prepare it for if you're speaking on Tuesday for that final version. But I'm not going to be looking for it to be perfect. It's certainly not meant to be perfect.
Great.
And the hope is that it'll help you evolve so that by the time we get to the persuasive speech, it's easy.
Thanks.
So when you say that the speech is due, the rough draft of it anyways is due Sunday night, if, do you want us to type out the entire speech word for word kind of thing? Okay, just like the outline with the body and the introduction, things like that, okay.
Just like the sample outline that I shared with you, the Lemonade outline, that's what I'm looking for in terms of development. Now, you only have to technically have the speech body worked out for this draft. I will give you feedback on the introduction and the conclusion, and it's a part of the grading process. But for those who aren't speaking until Thursday or the following Tuesday, you maybe don't have your introduction and conclusion prepared yet. But if you're speaking on Tuesday, you should have your introduction and conclusion prepared. So the best thing to do, maybe not today, I'm not expecting it to be done right now, but by Sunday, the best thing that you can do is build the body of the speech first and then go back and write the introduction and conclusion. Because then you know exactly what you're aiming to do. You've got your research worked out, and so it's a lot easier to build that introduction and conclusion thoughtfully. Does that make sense? If you try to do it first, sometimes it's like, I just totally got writer's block. I don't even know where to start with this thing. So that can happen, and that way, if you have the research, you know where you're going, what you want them to take, and so it's easier to build a really awesome attention getter. All right, so I want to get you guys thinking about persuasive speech development today, or informative speech development today. So one of the things I want to share with you is related to language. And when we think about language, sometimes when we're writing a speech, we just want to like have just thoughtful language. Some of you are really great writers. And so sometimes you'll write a speech that's got really powerful language, meaningful language, great choice of words. But sometimes great writers tend to overwrite or overstate their ideas, meaning that they put too much into it. And they use words that we would term as $10 words. Those words are really meant to be read, not spoken. So as speakers, we want to write to be spoken. We want to write to be understood by a broader audience. I've got this great video to share with you about the power of simple words. And when we think about simple words, we're not saying that we're simplifying those ideas. We're not necessarily simple in the way that we present information, but we're using language. We're using language in a way that engages a broad audience that they can really connect with. And it's meant to be spoken and heard. I want to make sure everybody can hear this. Can you all see and hear my video on your end? Okay, so you see that, let's see if you can see and hear it now. Do you see the TED Ed?
I hear it, I don't see it.
Okay.
We all
Let me go back just a tiny bit. Okay, you all should be able to see and hear it now.
Yeah.
It's very short, so I think it's very interesting.
When we talk, sometimes we say things directly. I'm going to the store. I'll be back in 5 minutes.
That's not the one. It took us away from the one. This is the one.
We all know the scene. Dorothy closes her eyes and repeats the Good Witch's mantra. No coordinates exist like one's domicile. No coordinates exist like one's domicile. No coordinates exist like one's domicile. Only Dorothy doesn't say that. She says 5 one-syllable words. There's no place like home. Each a word you probably learned in your first year of speaking. Each perfectly concise. It's not that L. Frank Baum didn't have a thesaurus. It's that in most cases, $10 words fail. Would Aerosmith have had a hit with Ambulate This Direction? Probably not. Would Patrick Henry have ignited a revolution by saying, provide me with liberty or bestow upon me fatality? Unlikely. When it comes to words, bigger isn't always better. $10 words are rendered worthless if they're not understood. That's not to say every piece of literature should be written at a 4th grade reading level, but it is important to know your audience. If you're a novelist, your audience is probably expecting 300 pages of vivid descriptors. At the very least, they're expecting you won't use the same 50 words to fill those pages. But most of us don't have the luxury of a captive audience. We're competing against a whole world of distractions, and we're fighting for space in an attention span that continues to shrink across generations. So get to the point already. Variety may be the spice of life, but brevity is its bread and butter. So when it comes to $10 words, save your money and buy a Scrabble board.
All right. What do you think? Do you agree? What do you think? Were you surprised? Anything surprising about that? Here I am, a speech teacher at a college telling you to speak to your audience. I'm not saying dumb it down. I'm saying use words in a way that's thoughtful, right? But inspiring and memorable. So you don't want to overwhelm them with too much information. Those academic journals, they're meant to be written and be read. And you can reread them, right? You can go back and look over the information. But a speech isn't meant to be read. It's meant to be spoken. And it would be much more like a conversation than it would be an essay. And I want you all to keep that in mind. You're not essay writing in this class, you're speech writing, and there's a big difference. That's why I say no to the manuscript, because I want you to speak and I don't want you to read. So that's a good rule of thumb, is you want to make eye contact at least 65 to 75% of the time. You can't do that if you haven't written the speech to be spoken. And you're not going to engage your audience thoughtfully if you just read to them, right? It's not going to mean the same thing. But just like now, I'm speaking to you and you feel like we're having a conversation. There's a dialogue. I'm receiving your feedback and I'm listening to what you're saying to me as I'm speaking to you. And that's what you should be doing when you're writing your speeches. So I hope that that video helped to illustrate that point for you. I want to talk with you all a little bit more about informative speaking and some techniques that you can use to engage your audience and help them to remember the information. When you hear a good speech, what do you want from it? That's what I want you all to think about. Have you ever heard a good speech? TED Talks are a great way to get yourself comfortable with the spoken word. They have a great many topics from many different interests. So if you have a specialized interest, say you're into comic books, I bet there's a TED Talk for that. If you want to learn more about public speaking, there's TED Talks for that. There's all kinds of great TED Talks on science and technology, on things you wouldn't even imagine. But if you want to be able to engage and really, really listen to a speech aimed at you, try listening to some TED Talks because they're really good at that. But for now, I want you to be able to write a speech well. And so one of the things I want to talk with you about is how you can do that by using just some techniques that we know as speech teachers, one of those being simple language. The other things that I want you to think about are aspects of informative speaking that I think that you'll find helpful. So, I wish I was a really good whiz with this technology, and I'm sorry that I'm not there yet, but I will get there. I think we're all going to get really good at Zoom at some point. For now, thanks for your patience. All right, so today I want to talk with you guys a little bit about informative speaking, and I'm going to try to keep this very concise and very brief because I find it really boring to have someone lecture at me. I really do, unless I find it really applies to what I'm working on personally. But B, I feel like Zoom really inhibits any type of dynamic interaction that I can have with you. I feel like these talks tend to go longer because we're in Zoom than they would if we were in the classroom. So I'm going to try to keep it really concise and specific. However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't ask questions, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply it to your topics. Since you guys did confirm that you all have topics, right? You all chose your speech dates and you all have topics. Hopefully you can apply this to what you're working on. For now, I want to ask, can I just get 2 or 3 of you to share your topics with me? Just tell us what your topic for your informative speech is going to be.
I'm going to be talking about who my favorite author is.
Colin, can you tell us who your favorite author is?
Yeah, his name's Brandon Sanderson. He writes a lot of high fantasy, and he's also a college professor.
And tell us a little bit more about Sanderson. What made you decide to talk about this?
I read his books on repeat nonstop for years now. He pumps out work. You know, he makes it look easy. You know, you have George R. Martin and Patrick Rothfuss, who can't put out a single book in a 15-year span, but this guy's over here pumping out 1,000-page books every other year, and he's got a whole line of work. You know, somewhere lining up to about 39 books that he's working on, movie that he's working on, all sorts of stuff. And so, and he stays informed with his audience. You know, he posts on Reddit and on Twitter, and he posts videos of his college lectures on YouTube. And so just all the things he does to keep in touch with his community and his fan base just really makes it easy to be a fan of his. He's got a great work ethic. So I enjoy his books and everything he does.
I really like him. It sounds like, as an author, it sounds like he would be really a great inspiration to a lot of people just based on the work that he does and how he keeps his fan base interested. I wonder if you couldn't make this more meaningful to the audience to use him as an example of how you can engage a fan base or how you can market yourself or your ideas. And you can share it, that way you can still share his work and celebrate what he does, but it doesn't come across as a commemorative speech. It actually offers a life skill. Do you think that's something you could do with it?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, when we were doing the introductions, that's something I was going to talk about and see if I could link because we have to do a Prezi or a PowerPoint, and see if I could either somehow embed or, you know, at least put up a link to his YouTube channel where you can go to all his college lectures, which he does about, you know, writing and things like that.
Very cool. You know, you could even incorporate some media in your message. If you wanted to do a minute of maybe a video or some of his lecture, just a minute, because this speech I really want to be about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but as long as you have 5 minutes of content, you could do about a minute of media if you wanted to. That's just a thought. But I think if you make it more about the audience, maybe offer them that life hack or life skill, and then maybe encourage them to check out his work and learn more about him, or maybe even you could read an excerpt of his work and let maybe that entice them to want to read his work themselves. I don't know if you have an audience full of readers. I'm sure there's a few that are really, really interested in maybe reading his novels, but that way you don't miss out on the chance to engage with all of them. Yeah, that's just a thought. But I love this, that you're so passionate. And that's one of the things I heard when you were sharing this with me, is that you really have a passion for his work, but even his way of getting people to connect. That connection he creates seems to be inspiring to you. And I think that's a great message to share. All right, who else has got a topic to share with us? What's your topic going to be?
I want to do, well, my topic is online investing.
So tell me, Jackson, what made you decide to do online investing?
Well, I'm a finance major, so I know a lot about it. So I think the only difficulty I'm going to have with this, and I know a lot of the content, but I think the hardest thing I'm going to come face to face with is trying to make it connect with people, because a lot of people think that finance is boring.
Okay.
Numbers, math is boring. So
okay, but you don't. You don't
Right.
think finance is boring. You don't think math is boring. Okay, so, okay, many a good teachers will tell you, like, I don't think people love public speaking, but I have to find some way to make them want to like it or give it a chance, right? So many good teachers inspire us. They inspire us to think about something differently. That's going to be part of the challenge for you in this speech, is how can you make them want this? How can you make them interested? And I think you've got a great starting point. The fact that you even consider that is exactly where you need to be with it. I love that you consider that. Well, anybody can look at this and say, well, online investing, that's going to make me some money, right? You can see there's some inspiration in that, but you're like, okay, but I want more than that for them. I want them to see that there's a lot to be learned from this. So I think that's awesome. I think you've got a great starting point. All right, and one more topic. Let's hear from one more person.
I'm going to be doing criminal behavior, focusing kind of on serial killers. I liked the topic because of the series Mindhunter. It really piqued my interest.
Mindhunter piqued your interest. And I don't know, just out of curiosity, how many of you are a little fascinated by human behavior in general?
Everyone.
Why do we do the things we do, right?
Exactly.
All of us, I think, can say there's something in there for everybody. How many of you are fascinated by serial killer behavior? The criminal minds. All right, and most people can say they're at least interested. So I think, Sarah, that's gonna pique our interest anyways. But I think you're gonna have a lot of competing influences because there's so much stuff out there right now. So to make it unique, to make it distinct, that's gonna be a challenge for you. But I think you've got a great topic. You've obviously got some interest here, but it seems to be all the rage right now is serial killer stuff. We're bored at home, at least a lot of us are, and it's definitely enticing. We just started rewatching Dexter. We watched it, back in the day, we watched it religiously every Sunday, and we just started rewatching it. It's like we're watching it again for the first time. So there's a lot of stuff out there. I think it's a great topic. I do think you're going to have some competing interests. So that's going to be the hard part for you. All right, so that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about how can you engage an audience thoughtfully and in a way that's going to make them want to listen, even though your topics are very much yours, your choice. You chose them for your reasons, whether you're inspired or influenced, whether you're passionate about it. You're going to want to instill all of that into your message in order to engage your audience. Today, we're going to look at those informative speech topics. We'll talk about organizational patterns just briefly. We're going to talk about the pedagogy versus andragogy. It's how adults learn versus how kids learn. None of you are children. Once you cross over into college, it doesn't matter if you're 12 years old here today or if you're 120 years old here today. You are an adult learner if you are in a college classroom. And so we're going to appeal to our audience members as adult learners, not as children. We're not going to teach them like we would teach them in a K through 12 classroom. High school is different than college. People have different reasons to be here, and usually it's how it's going to apply to their lives. And so that's what you're going to want to think about. Learning styles. Have you ever heard of VARK, the learning styles? Okay, well, we're going to talk a little bit about learning styles. There's a lot of talk about learning styles these days, but I want to share with you just a little bit about what I know in public speaking and those learning styles. And we'll talk about redundancy and enhancing the audience's ability to remember the most important details of your message. Now, like I said, I'm going to go through this quickly and I'm going to be concise because I find that it's the best way in Zoom to do that, but I will make this available to you in Canvas. And I do want you to feel free to ask any questions as we go. All right, so first and foremost, informative speech topics, they do aim to teach our audience something they would not otherwise already have or know. They can be about objects. They could be thinking of things that are mechanical or thinking about new technology, for instance. It can be about procedures. And when we think about procedures, it starts somewhere and ends somewhere. It's a beginning, and it usually has a step-by-step guide or chronological guide. Some of you might have some self-help techniques that you're going to offer in your speech topics. So you might want to offer a guide to living better or a way to approach that solution. So thinking procedurally, right? It's going to be in some chronological order. You can be talking about people. It can be biographical, much like Colin's going to be talking about his favorite author. We can talk about events. So we can be talking about, for instance, Black Lives Matter, a current event that's happening right now, or we could be talking about a historical event like the Civil Rights Movement, or maybe talk about both, right? Events, we can talk about events. We have ideas, and ideas are my favorite thing to hear about. Concepts, theories, issues, current events that have some sort of visceral response, right? It's affecting people in a way that really stirs their emotions. So those things can come up as also being informative. But when we think about informative messages, it's meant to give information. It's meant to educate, to teach. And in some ways, like I said, the best teachers inspire, so it inspires. Now, when we think about topical or typical organizational patterns, rather, we're thinking chronological. So those procedural speeches or historical timelines, the self-help step-by-step guides, we want to offer that. It could be spatial. We could be talking about a place or space. It could be based on complexity. So you start at the hardest and you work your way to the easiest, or you start at the easiest like we do in this class and work our way to the hardest. If I was going to teach you to use, say, Windows 10, I might start with what you already know in Windows and work my way up to some of the most advanced features. If I was going to encourage you to maybe check out the new iPhone, I might talk about what old aspects that you're familiar with, what features that has, and then I might talk about some of the more complex or more interesting aspects of the new iPhone. But most likely, your speeches are going to be topical, meaning they don't necessarily have to go in a particular order, each of those main points. You've chosen your main points. Maybe you've got 3 main points like I suggested last class, or maybe you've got 2. Maybe you realize that 3 is too many. In a short speech like this, it's best to stick to around 2 or 3 main points. Some of you might have very short main points, and so you have up to 5. But I encourage you to have just 2 or 3. Now, that being said, if you choose to be topical in how you present the information, meaning they don't have to have a particular order, but you do have main points, then you're going to want to think about the best way to place those points. Sometimes students will start with, what is something? So they define it in the first main point. And then the second main point, they might say, this is how you apply it. So you might see that that's topical, but it's important not to start with application, right? Until you tell them what it is. Well, we're thinking that then the what it is can be chronological. So it does end up being a more of a chronological format. When we think topical, we want to put it in a strategic arrangement. I did mention this last class that you might think of the primacy and recency effect. This can be really important for your persuasive speeches, but this is where we decide based on what we want our audience to remember or recall the most, where we're going to place that information. The most important details, we might start with that and then build upon that for each of the other main points. Or we might end with the most important information just because we want them to retain that and recall it. Or we might place the least important information right in the middle, the second main point, because we want them to focus on those first main points and last main points. It's really up to you how you build this message, but I want you guys to think that there is a method to the madness. You do have some way of approaching this so that it is meaningful to your audience, and it's really up to you how you're going to do that. Now, you can use chronological and topical together, so you might have a chronological main point. Don't be afraid to use these interchangeably. Just remember you know what you're doing. That's the most important detail. All right, I asked if you were familiar with learning styles. Now I want you guys just to think for a second. How do you learn? What do you really appreciate when you're learning about something new for the first time? Do you appreciate that someone was able to speak through it easily? That they were able to teach you with their words? That they use language well? That they use vocal variety? That their tone of voice imparts some sort of wisdom or maybe a compassionate tone? Are you an auditory learner? Do you find that you learn best in lectures? Do you learn best by listening? Are you someone that really listens to like podcasts to learn something new? Or you might really like to listen to music just for the sake of maybe enhancing your life. So like classical music for the sake of going to that historical period. Or maybe you like NPR, you like listening to news stories. If that's you, you probably have an auditory preference. Now, when I say auditory preference, that's how you learn best. Anybody learn best by listening? If you learn best by listening, you might be rare in that because we find that not a lot of people do learn best by listening. Now, I could ask you, how many of you appreciate listening when you're learning? And that means you're probably multimodal, meaning you have more than one preferred learning style. How many of you think that listening is your preferred, your #1 preferred learning style, listening? All right, you could look around the room, people. I don't think I saw a single hand raise. Now, that being said, that means that professors who lecture, they're losing their audience. That's not the best approach. That's why I like to keep this really concise, right to the point. because that's not the way people like to learn. People like to learn through visual or kinesthetic approaches. So I'm going to take a look at what that looks like here. So we also have 3 other preferred learning styles. We have the, and this is from BARC, right? Auditory, it would be the A. We have visual or print, read, write learners. Now, some of you love to read, and maybe you really love having a textbook at your disposal in a class. Maybe you really appreciate wordy visual aids. Maybe you like to have that information handy. Maybe you're someone that likes to take notes, and that's really important to your learning. Some people really appreciate buying the book, and that's how they learn the techniques. How many of you, that's your preferred learning style? You think that you are a visual read, write learner? Okay. Then we have visual learners. Now, visual learners are different than the read, write learner. Read, write learners tend to like books. They like the textbook. They like to write notes. Visual learners like visual components, like a visual aid, like a PowerPoint. They love diagrams like this one. They love having some sort of visual component like charts or graphs or definitions, but they don't need wordy information. They just like to be able to see the information presented before them in a concise and focused way. It helps them to retain the information, it helps them to think on the information, and it's going to help them to understand it more fully. Maybe you're a visual learner, or maybe you find yourself to be both, read, write, and visual. Then we have the last one, which I tend to see the most in the college classroom, because you're adult learners. You learn best by doing. Kinesthetic and tactile learners learn best by applying the information directly. That doesn't mean it has to be hands-on, but they prefer it to be hands-on. They maybe won't learn how to do a new skill until they've done it. You can't just tell them how, they have to physically do it. Kinesthetic learners also learn best with visual aids like those that allow them to interact, like this one, where you're actually applying it. Like, which one of these learning styles do I most prescribe to, right? You're actually applying it. Or maybe I could give you a quick little quiz or assessment to help you identify with your learning style, or maybe a thought experiment. I once had a student in a class begin her speech with a little piece of paper. And she said, okay, draw on this little piece of paper a picture, a little person. And so I drew my little person, the whole class drew their little person. If I can get this to come in the camera. There's my little person on my Post-it. She gave this to everybody in the room. She says, okay, you've got this little person on your little piece of paper. And she was talking about bullying. She started to say, you've got your little person on this piece of paper. And then she gave us some statistics about bullying. She said, now I want you to crumple up that little piece of paper. Crumple it up. Crumple it up. She had us all crumple up that piece of paper. She says, now open it up. Open up that piece of paper. She says, now I want you to try to straighten it out. She says, try to get all those creases out of it. Some people are like, oh, I have tears in mine. And she's like, I know. She's like, can you get all those creases out? She says, that's the impact that bullying leaves on people. They may seem okay. She said, but those creases is the pain that's left behind. And I thought that was such a powerful way to engage an audience, such a thoughtful way to help us to think about the long-term effects of bullying. And so that was one kinesthetic approach. She did that in her attention getter. So we can be creative and crafty in how we engage our audience. We have to think about who they are. Now, out of curiosity, you might have 1 or 2 preferred. Maybe you have 3 or 4 preferred learning styles. How many of you consider yourself to be an auditory learner? Primarily. That's your first preferred style. Okay, still nobody. Okay, how about read, write? You learn best by reading, taking notes. Okay, how about visual learners? So you appreciate having some visual component. Without it, sometimes you don't gain anything, right? You need to have a visual component. And then how about kinesthetic? Learn best by doing? All right, people, look around. This is your audience. The majority of the people in this room learn best by doing. How many of you think 2 or 3 different techniques are important to you? I will argue that all of you will learn best if your speakers can encourage you to listen and apply the knowledge. So all of these things. So I want you guys to think about it in terms of what can you do for your audience? Well, one of the things that you can do for your audience is allow them to engage with your material, both visually and physically, kinesthetically. There's a lot of ways you can do that. We can talk about techniques, but for now, you got to be creative. You're going to have to literally think outside the box. And also consider how valuable your presentation aid is going to be to most of the members of your audience. If they say they can't learn without it, then you better be thoughtful in preparing it. Now, I said I was going to talk about adult learning styles. The most important thing to know about adult learners is that they're not children, and they want to see practical application. If I was going to say that I'm talking to a room full of people who are being educated to go into their fields, to go into their trades, that's the most important thing I know, that you guys are getting ready to go out into the world and be the best you can be at what you've chosen to do with your lives. But more importantly, you're learning to get on your own 2 feet. You're learning to build a better life for yourself. So you want to be financially secure. You want to be healthy. You want to be vital. You want to be able to be your most confident version of yourself. I mean, think about all the things that you're trying to take with you at this point of your life in your lives from now on. And that's what adult learning is about. So when adult learners spend their time listening, they don't want that time wasted. They want to know that the information is valuable and can be readily applied. So when you connect with your adult learners, you want to provide them useful information, right? And some way, since we know that they're kinesthetic, we know that they have to be immersed in their message, they have to see some practical application, we need to involve them through new information. We want to give them new experiences, for instance. You might say, imagine this. And as I'm looking at these topics, I'm thinking about ways that you can do that. So imagine this, Jackson, here with your financial investing. Imagine that you have freedom. You have freedom to go into the grocery store and buy whatever it is you need. You have freedom to plan that next vacation. You have freedom to go online and buy whatever it is you want. Imagine what that would feel like, right? So that's a new experience. I'm going to connect you to that new experience by teaching you a little bit about how you can invest wisely through simple things like online investing. So that's just taking them to that new experience. That's enticing them. Now, that's just one thing that you might do there, but it's allowing them to see that there's something new to be gained that gives them that imagine this experience, right? Now, I can't tell you how bad I want to go on a vacation. I bet most of you are like, oh, I can't wait to get on a plane again. I can't even stand it. I had plans this summer. We were going to go, I'll do all kinds of things. I had a road trip in mind. So, I mean, just imagining the possibilities, even if it's not necessarily taking me on vacation, you just set me on the path to something new, an experience I could explore. So thinking about you guys sharing this wonderful wisdom with us, this new information, it's almost like a vacation for some of us right now. So that's a great way to frame that message. You want it to be relevant, right? So where Sarah's not going to teach us how to be criminals, I don't think that would be ethical. But she is going to teach us how to think about the human mind a little bit more. She's going to teach us about ways that we can analyze the world around us. And when we see these strange behaviors, right, maybe they're warning signs in some ways. Ted Bundy was terribly handsome and very charming. No one would have known that he was who he was. In fact, they still didn't believe it after all the evidence was presented. So this is relevant information for us people who are just navigating this crazy world around us, believe it or not. So allowing us to receive information that's relevant, even for things that we wouldn't think is practical application, it can be really helpful. And then finally, help your listeners to solve problems. Colin, I know it doesn't seem like this is your topic, but man, who doesn't want to be able to market themselves better or be able to build a better business model, or be able to identify with someone like Brandon Sanderson who's doing it so well. That's why I was thinking that would be a really interesting takeaway from your message, because you mentioned that. That's something that really stands out for you about who he is. And he's an academic, but he's one that people are intrigued by. They love reading his work. You don't get that all the time. So you've got something there that teaches us a little bit something more that we can offer the world through these human life experiences. That's why we love biographies so much about accomplished people, because it teaches us how we might be able to do those things ourselves. It inspires us. So that might be an interesting approach. You can teach us how to solve a problem. But we all have our own problems. And trust me, you don't have to do that, Colin. You might not even end up doing that with the research, but it's just a thought. We all have our own problems. I can think of a million things that I would like to solve in my own life on a daily basis. Sometimes it's really easy stuff that if I just understood it better, I'm sure I could fix it. Sometimes it's more challenging things. I have a student who's talking about stress, and she's going to teach us how to overcome some of the stressors that we deal with on a daily basis. How many of you feel as if you are experiencing more stress in the last year? Honestly, how many of you are experiencing more stress in this last year? I think 2020 is going to be a remarkable year where we look back and we go, oh my gosh, who knew that these things could happen? And a lot of us are experiencing more stress than we have in the past. So thinking about the problems of our everyday lives, even just taking us away from those problems for a minute can be really helpful, but also helping us to solve those problems is really valuable to us as adult learners. All right, and I'm going to try to keep this concise, but really, and I'm going to try to avoid the risk of being redundant as I mention how important it is to build on redundancy. Okay, so I told you you're going to tell them what you're going to tell them in the introduction. You're going to tell them what you came to tell them in the body of the speech. You're going to remind them what you told them in the conclusion. That's a little bit of redundancy. It's important. And I don't want you guys to feel like this repetition is going to impact your message's success. If anything, it's going to help your message to be memorable. It's going to help your audience to remember the most important details, and it's going to help them to follow along with you in a really concise and clear way. Keep in mind that you might have to offer some mini summaries along the way. You might have just given them a whole new amount of information that it would really help for you to break it down or even reiterate it in a different way. If you gave us a complex definition, it's always good to say in other words. If you told us a difficult quote, it's always a good idea to restate that, to rephrase that, and tell the audience what you want them to take from it. I've had students just ramble on quotes, and then I was like, huh? Because they knew it so well, they didn't think that their audience didn't. But they have to retell it in a different way because you're only hearing it one time. So keep that in mind. Also, I want you guys to think about making your key items short and succinct and simple. Oh gosh, I hate this terminology, but it really sticks. And you probably won't forget it. It's KISS. It's keep it simple, stupid. It's a terrible, terrible acronym, right? I would never want to call anybody a name. But it's that one thing that sticks in my mind every time I say make your key ideas short and simple. You can't help but remember it. If you keep it simple for your audience, chances are they're going to remember it easily. Don't insult your audience, though. It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. Pace your information. You don't want to give them too much all at once, and you certainly don't want to give them too much overall. And we can get overwhelmed with too much information. I don't know if you've ever taken a class that you found just too difficult. And you walked into it, you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. And then you find that, you know, you get it when you're sitting in the room, but then when you leave, you don't remember or you don't know how. Well, that can happen to your audience as well. So one rule of thumb is to make sure that you do 30% new information. That's it, 30% new information. 30% new information. And then work to support it the rest of the time. So 70% support. That's evidence, that's the research, right? Facts and statistics. You can use expert testimony or lay testimony. You can use your own experiences. You can use stories, anecdotes, why not a little humor if possible. You can use visual aids, charts and graphs, those statistics. And don't be afraid to put the statistics on the screen because that's going to connect with those kinesthetic learners who like to be immersed in the information. They're going to see it, you're going to talk through it, and they're going to retain it, and they're going to engage with it. So keep in mind that you want to pace your information. Don't overwhelm us with too much information. And then finally, reinforce key ideas. You can do that verbally with your visual aids, with your body language. You can, I'm sorry, verbally with your words and the sound of your voice, but non-verbally with your visual aids and your body language. Got ahead of myself. But keep in mind that you can emblematize your thoughts. I have 5 things to discuss with you today. The most important thing to remember is this. If I emphasize something like this, you're going to know it's important, right? So using your body language, nonverbal language to emphasize your ideas is going to help your audience to remember the information. All right, so like I said, I want to keep it concise. I don't want too much coming at you today. But do you have questions about the way that you structure an informative speech, those organizational patterns. What about pedagogy versus andragogy? Some ways that you can be redundant, enhance audience recall, restate, reframe, reiterate, remind, and don't be afraid to do that, especially if you know it's important. All right, what about learning styles? What do you think you guys can do to engage your kinesthetic learners? Since we know the majority of your class learns best by doing, obviously you can't have them come up and be a part of your demonstration. What can you do? Any thoughts?
Ask them to incorporate some sort of prop on their side to make it connect, so we're all doing the same thing at once, maybe, or have the same tactile, just something to elaborate on. You know what I mean? Like a water bottle, for instance, rather than for just, so for like, just as a key point, like for my ocean dumping topic, I would ask like to bring a water bottle and say like, okay, not to get too wordy right now, but yeah, like rather than a reusable, say this plastic water bottle lasts for 500 years, one water bottle. But to have that in front of them, they can see that it's right there, you know what I mean? Rather than this imaginary water bottle.
That's a great point. Okay, so, or you can say, you know, how many of you are trying to drink more water? How many of you are trying to drink more water? You're trying. You're like actually making an effort to drink more water. Okay. Okay, you're trying to get rid of the stuff that's not good for you. Water is 0 calories. It's all right. And then how many of you are trying to reduce your impact on the environment? Anybody trying to do that? Have you ever thought about how long that plastic stays in the environment? And then that would be a good, if you can't get them to get up and get it, but you get them to think about it, their real place right now in time, you get them to think about it. So then you could give us the statistics. Like, I don't know how long it lasts, but I imagine it's a long time, and I imagine you could tell us more when you get into your speech. That's one thing you can do. I don't know where you're at right now, where you're sitting in your room, but when you look around you, do you have plastic around you? Do you have plastic around you? I have plastic all around me. I have a lotion bottle, a hand sanitizer, I've got my water bottle, and that's another thing you could do. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Get them to focus on themselves, what they're doing. I had done something like that in a classroom with a student. The student actually, she walked around and started taking people's water bottles and throwing them in the garbage. Or she almost did. She was pretending like she was going to. And then she was like, wait a second. I don't like seeing you use these disposable bottles, but if I throw them away, it's just as bad as if I was using them myself. So she like did that thing, and I was like, oh, you know, because I was like, don't throw their bottles away. What are you doing? We obviously couldn't touch your bottles right now, right? We wouldn't do that, but yeah, you want to make them be a part of it, and to have a little guilt isn't a bad way to get them involved. You know, kinesthetically, right? They're going to remember that. All right, that's a great point. What else you got? How else do you think you can engage the audience creatively, right? Okay, I've got a bad example. Can I give you a bad example? Who? Someone was going to say something.
I was.
Tell us, Shankivia.
So my topic is government secrecy. That's going to be really hard to involve everyone with that topic.
I don't know. Alexa, can you hear me right now?
Yes, I can still hear you.
I wonder if that wouldn't be a way to involve them. How many of you have an Alexa right there next to you?
Mine started talking.
Yeah. I don't know, Shankivia, you might be able to think of something. Especially since we're all on our computers right now. Yeah, you could have a little fun with this one. I think you got a great topic that you can find a way to involve us. And showing us some of those things that are happening that we don't know about is enough. That's enough. That's solving a problem for us. That's getting us to invest. So I think you've got something there. I've got a bad example of something bad that happened. Okay, so remember, you want to capture our attention. And you guys will think of something really clever, I'm sure. But dramatic attention getters really do work well. Now, I encourage students to be as clever and creative as you can with the attention getter. You still want it to apply to your message in a meaningful and thoughtful way. I had a student, she was a wonderful speaker, an excellent speaker. She always captured our attention and kept our attention the entire time. She could make great eye contact. She was really animated and dynamic. I'll never forget her as a speaker. She spoke on things aren't always what they seem to be in the class. And she presented us with these beautiful little cupcakes. Oh my gosh, they were pink with sprinkles, and they were just these beautiful little cupcakes. I couldn't wait. I was hungry. It was after lunch, and we hadn't eaten because I had classes back to back, and I just could not wait to eat some of this cupcake. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I love when students feed me. But so we got these cupcakes, and she says, don't take a bite yet. And she starts to get our attention by, telling us a story about how things aren't always what they seem to be. She says, I bet you're really interested in that cupcake. She goes, go and take a bite of it. So we all were like, and we took a bite, a big bite, a mouthful. And it was the worst cupcake I've ever eaten. It was so salty. She had used salt instead of sugar. And I was like trying to get the taste out of my mouth. And it was the beginning of the speech. Honestly, I didn't hear a single word she said after that because I was so uncomfortable with the taste in my mouth. I couldn't get it out of my mouth. Here, a wonderful speech went horribly wrong. It was too dramatic and it was way too visceral. I was sick to my stomach after that. I've had students shock me with horrifying images, especially when it comes to like animal cruelty, you can imagine, to where I can't listen to their message because I'm so stirred emotionally by the image. It just doesn't connect. I've had people get up and leave the room because they couldn't handle the message that was being shared. So you want to be careful, right? There's a fine line between really immersing us and really challenging us and then overwhelming us or being unethical. And even more so, you got to be careful because the last thing you want is your audience to stop listening. That is absolutely pointless, right? You're wasting your time. So thinking about that, you want to be creative, but not too creative. And if you are, make sure you're careful. Make sure you try it out on somebody. But that's great ways to invest in your message and get us to be involved. Preparation is key. And if you show some preparation, chances are your audience is going to be intrigued. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? I love research. Do you guys love research? Who loves research? I love good research. When they do tests on other people and then they come back with the research, I'm like fascinated by that. When people like get involved in the research themselves, I'm fascinated by that. I love to learn about those research studies where they've involved people and they've gotten these great insights from them. And there's some great ones out there. I'm sure you can think of a research study that you've heard that you're like, oh yes. I think of the blue eyes, brown eyes experiment. Have you ever heard that one before? I'll share it with you guys. Not today, but I will. But it's a great experiment. But
that's sometimes the anti-racism lady, right?
Yes.
But yes, that's a really old video. I have seen one of those. That's a really good one.
Yeah, I've heard of it too.
Who wants to tell us what it is? It's just one of those things that's.
I can. It's so what she does. She brings the original video I saw. I mean, it's old. I mean, I couldn't tell you the year, but she's teaching a group of elementary school students and trying to explain racism to them. And so she decides that what she's going to do is give all of the blue-eyed kids preferential treatment pretty much and make all the brown-eyed kids wear a collar so that way everyone knows they're brown-eyed and they don't get like the recess the same way. They don't get to they get told that they're less and they're worse than the blue-eyed kids, and just basically trying to explain how the systemic racism exists. And then the next day she swaps it over and allows the blue-eyed kids to wear the collar and tells them that they're less and they're not equal to the brown-eyed kids and the brown-eyed kids are better. And then, but it also showed that the kids who weren't wearing the collar, so the kids who were getting the preferential treatment, were rude and mean and nasty to the kids who were considered less for the day. And it just showed how quick that prejudice kicked in when you were told that you were better than someone else, and how easily they wouldn't talk to them, they wouldn't play with them. I mean, it was incredibly eye-opening. She still does a ton of talks and things like that. She's great.
Yeah, her name is Jane Elliott. Like he said, she does a lot of talks today. She'll do it with adult audiences now, and these people are like full on throwing on tantrums, and she's like, and you don't see what's going on in the world. Like, she's a great lady. She does a lot of good.
So you can see how much of an impact this has made, and the people that were a part of that original experience came back years later and talked with her and thanked her for that. See, involving people can be really meaningful. Even just sharing the impact of a study like this can really open our eyes to human behaviors and tendencies. Thank you for that, Sharon. You all did that really well. I love that experiment. But so I want you guys to think about this creatively. Remember, there's not a one-way approach to public speaking. There's techniques, there's things that you can do to be able to effectively communicate an idea. But I want creativity to be a part of that process. Don't be afraid to try new things. I told my last class that this is our laboratory. If something doesn't go well, okay, we'll live with it. This is a chance to see what's going to work and what doesn't work. Now, I wouldn't necessarily ask for human volunteers to be a part of your message unless you can plan that ahead of time. So, because you may have someone who's willing and then they don't participate. So definitely talk with them ahead of time, talk to them before class, say, hey, I want to do this. Would you be willing to do this? And this is what it looks like. Would you be willing to do this? And I think that would go over better than waiting to see if someone can do it for you in the midst of your speech. You definitely want to plan for anything like that. You know, if it's going to take a minute, you want to make sure you know it's going to take a minute so you don't go over time. You guys got 5 to 6 minutes, no more than 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Okay. I am seeing some rain on my end, and it seems that I've just got really bad luck that I lost my power last time. It literally knocked me out I was out of power for 4 hours. So I don't want to see that happen again. So I want to go ahead and move on to the next exercise. But I do want you guys to see that I have made it available to you in Canvas so that you guys can follow up with me. Just get there real quick. Who's got rain on their end? Yeah, me too. Okay, good. I want to make sure that I hurry up so you guys don't lose us here. But I'm going to go ahead and open up our Canvas shell. If you go into Canvas, you should see that I have uploaded what I call the Pete Piper evaluation. And I'm going to go ahead and go there now. If you guys can follow along with me on your end, I'll share it, but I want you to be able to access it. If you can't access Canvas right now, will you just raise your hand and say, I can't access it? I just want to make sure everybody's able to access Canvas. Okay, so you're going to want to access Canvas. And if you go ahead and go into Canvas now, you are going to see that I have uploaded an assignment for today. The hope is that you're going to finish it today. It's under our week 3 module. I am going to give you guys until Sunday to finish that. I know you've got your drafts due on Sunday, but it shouldn't take you more than just a couple minutes to complete. And it's best done in class. So we're going to try to do it in class, but if you have trouble accessing it for any reason, I wanted to give you extra time. I'm going to open this on my end, and what I want you guys to see is that it's videos. One is a needs improvement video, one's a final version. But more importantly, just under that is the student evaluation forms. There's an online form, and then there's just a regular form. The online form is one that can be completed online. You can save it and submit it. The other form is one that you can print if you're someone that wants to handwrite it. Normally in a class, I would print it and give it to you in class and you would complete it. You are going to be completing one of these student evaluation forms for the informative speech. I'm going to help you choose a student to evaluate, and you'll be responsible for completing the evaluation form. You'll turn it into me, I'll give you points, and then I'll give it back to you, or I'll give it to them, the person that you evaluated, so they can get some feedback from you. Okay, does that make sense? I want to make sure that you can access it, so I wanted to do a student speech today with you so that it makes sense to you. You're not just seeing it for the first time when we start speeches. You'll do 1 for the informative speech, 2 for the impromptu speech, and then 2 for the persuasive speech. So I want to make sure you can either print it or access it and you can use it online. So I'm going to go ahead and access the online form so you can see it and you can see what I'm trying to get you to do. I want to make sure that this opens for you. Can you see the form on your end? Did it open for you? Perfect. All right. So what I'm going to show you is as you go through this, you can see it it has an introduction, a conclusion, a delivery, and an overall evaluation. And then as you scroll down, you can see that it's asking you to type some stuff. So you could say, Tony, you made great eye contact.
as you spoke. Okay, so you could do something like that. What could you do next time? Be sure, whoops, I don't want to do it there. That's a little tiny. Be sure to cite your sources clearly in the speech. And then how many oral citations? I heard 3, but they could have been more clearly cited. What do you remember most about the speech? And here's what I'll say what I remember most about the speech, just so you can see, you can type on the form. Now, when you answer these, did the speaker gain attention and interest? You can choose excellent, good, average, fair, or poor. I think they did a great job, so I'm going to say excellent. I'm just going to highlight that somehow, whether I bold that. Did they introduce the topic clearly? I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that it's seen, whatever one I pick. Did they relate the topic to the audience? They did really well. So whatever you choose to highlight that, just make sure I can see that when I grade it, okay? And then once you've completed this form, you'll click File, Save As. You'll save it to your desktop or wherever you want to save it so that you can, I'm just going to say Tony Upchurch evaluation form. I don't care what you call it, just as long as you have a way to identify it. And then you're going to submit that. Now, a reason why I'm going through all of these details, because I know sometimes it's hard to do this on Canvas. So submit assignment. I'm going to go ahead and choose file. Go back to my desktop where I put it. There's that form. And then I click submit, just like you would do if you were attaching something to an email. So you guys should be able to do that. Now, what I want to do today is I want to watch the needs improvement version together. How are we doing on time? I want to watch the needs improvement version together with you. We'll talk a little bit about it, but you won't evaluate that one. And then depending on how much time we have, we'll watch the final version. We'll watch the final version of the speech, and then we'll evaluate that live. Now, if we don't have time to finish that, we can always finish that on our own today, and then you can submit it. But I think we should have plenty of time, okay? Now, I don't know if you'll be able to access it while we're watching it. It's up to you if you want to try to do that. If you want to print it and you want to fill it out and you want to take a picture and send that as your assignment, that's fine for me. I don't mind if you handwrite as long as it's legible and I can see the image. Or if you want to scan it, it's fine, whatever's easier. But you have those 2 options. Does that make sense? I'm going to give you extra time. I'll give you to Sunday, but I really think you should try to submit it today because I don't want you to have to worry about that and your draft. And it's not meant to be a long, comprehensive assignment. It's meant to be something you can do as you're watching the speaker speak. The same thing goes when you're watching the speaker speak in the class. I will have the list of speakers, and then I'll ask you to choose one. So we'll make sure you select your speakers before you give your speech or before you watch the speeches. So you'll know who you're evaluating and you can do it live as you're watching. You can see how much easier this is live in a classroom. It is a helpful assignment though, and so I didn't want to let go of it. I wanted to keep it. All right. Do you have questions for me?
Will you be changing the due date because it is due today?
Yes, I'm going to keep it as due today, but you guys are not going to lose any points. It's just going to remind you that there's some urgency in it. That's all. A lot of people can't stand it when it shows the late assignment on their end, but you won't lose any points, I promise, if it's not turned in until Sunday. Some of you will be able to turn it in right after class ends, so that's no problem. Any other questions for me? Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
My internet was out for almost 10 minutes, and I just got it working again. What did I miss?
Who is that talking?
Joseph.
Who is it?
Joseph Ferran.
Hey, Joseph. Okay, so we're going to watch an evaluation together, or we're going to watch a speech together, and then we're going to evaluate it. And then if you were to navigate over to Canvas, you'll see that there's an assignment due today. That way you can find it.
Okay.
And then you're going to choose either the online form or the form that you can print and fill out. It's up to you which one you want to use, but you're going to evaluate the speaker when I tell you to. We're not going to evaluate the first version. We're going to evaluate the second version.
Okay.
And it's not actually due until Sunday, but I wanted A, you to be able to find it, and B, for you to know that do your best to try to get it done today so you don't have to worry about it in addition to the drafts.
All right.
Okay. All right,
Thank
so
you.
any questions for me? Cool beans. Let's watch the first version of the speech. Now remember, this is meant for evaluation. We're allowed to pick on Pete Piper a little bit, okay? We are gonna pick on Pete. It's okay. The reason why his name is Pete is because he's talking about Chili Peppers.
Are we about to see both videos?
No. Oh, thank you, Sarah. She got it. Okay. We're going to watch both videos. We're going to watch the first one together. We're not evaluating it. We're just going to talk about it. Okay, so let's watch the first one. Needs improvement. We're just going to talk about it. Hopefully you guys can hear and see it on your end, but let me know if not. It is a YouTube video. I'll put the closed captions on. Ignore it if it's wrong. I didn't write the captions.
Chili peppers can be incredibly hot, but they're still one of my favorite things to eat.
Can you hear and see it? You can't hear and see it. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and start sharing again.
We can hear it, we can't see it.
Gotcha. Okay. Can you see Pete now?
Yes.
Or the hidden world of, okay, here we go.
Chili peppers can be incredibly hot, but they're still one of my favorite things to eat. Whether it's Mexican food, Thai food, or plain old Texas chili. Spicier the better in my view. So thinking about a speech topic, I thought it'd be a really neat idea to do it on chili peppers. Chili peppers have been around for thousands of years. Their scientific name is capsicum. I think that's how it's pronounced. They're different from black peppers, which come from Asia. Chili peppers come from South America. In fact, as you can see from this map, they began somewhere around Bolivia, Brazil. They spread everywhere else after Columbus came to the New World. The pleasure and pain of eating chili peppers comes from a chemical called capsaicin. Something like that. Here's a chili pepper that I cut in half. I know it's kind of small, you can't see it, but there are these veins and seeds in there, and that's where the capsaicin is held. It's where all the heat is. As one of the books I read said, there are two ways to measure the heat of the chili pepper. The HPLC method is more scientific, so scientists prefer to use it. This guy that I held up is an orange habanero pepper, and if you eat it, it'll burn your mouth up. So if you do eat a hot pepper, don't try rinsing out your mouth with water. Instead, drink some milk or some yogurt, some other stuff like that. Milk also helps if you burn your skin from contacting with a pepper. If you're attacked by a mugger or a robber, you can protect yourself by using pepper spray. The spray burns the eyes and skin and gives you enough time to escape. According to Jack Challam, chili peppers also have lots of medical benefits. They're used to reduce arthritis pain, help with indigestion, and cure baldness. Well, I guess that's all I have to say about chili peppers. Can you imagine life without chili peppers? I know I can't. So, thank you.
All right. Can you imagine your life without chili peppers? I know I can't. I cannot. How about you? What do you think? Okay. So Chad said the more he talks, the more he takes away from my assignment. What do you mean by that, Chad?
Oh, that's his topic.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I was getting into Scoville and the chemical contagion, how it can be used in pepper spray. Yeah, that guy just took 3 of my points. I don't think it's an idea.
Go presented better.
Actually, I'm more excited about the different hot sauces. And you know what? I will tell you this. He doesn't go into the most recent research. So even when we watch the improved version, don't worry. I don't think you'll lose much. Don't worry.
All right.
We'll just know more, and that will just make it that much easier for you.
Chili peppers really cure baldness?
I don't know. That was really cool. I don't know. I didn't expect you to do that.
Are you wearing a wig today?
Yeah, we noticed.
I was like, this man's normally bald, right?
I don't know, man.
I do know I eat a lot of hot, spicy stuff, and I got too much hair. Don't know if they coordinate or not. But.
So what do you think? Did you think he did all right?
I mean, personally, I don't think he did bad. He was just looking at his note cards way too much. And he was like a little
Fumbling with them, wasn't
doing
he?
it.
What's
Overall, I give him an A for effort.
You're too easy, Cody. That's too easy.
He needs to put more pizzazz in that slideshow. That slideshow needs some work.
What was up with the fireworks? I
don't know.
Pop in your mouth? I don't know. It's like a firework in your mouth. I don't know. And then the little map was really hard to see. Could you see the map? Yeah.
It wasn't really detailed about how they moved from Africa and South America.
It was a really hard
kind of a
connection.
picture.
Yeah, between each point too. It was really hard to get from each point because it just didn't seem to have enough detail to take us to the.
And he should probably work on, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but he should probably work on pronouncing capsaicin before he presents.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. You're not interrupting, don't worry. No, I think you're right. And he obviously didn't know his material that well because he couldn't even pronounce the words. That was frustrating. And he was having trouble getting through those note cards because he didn't have them organized. And it was only a 2-minute and 30-second speech. It's supposed to be at least 5 to 6 minutes. So there was a lot of stuff missing. As Jack Challam said, was not really a citation. And as one of the books I read said, is definitely not a citation, right? That's definitely not a citation. Now you guys are probably wondering, like, what is a citation? How do we cite those sources? And I've got a question for you. Who is the CDC?
Center for Disease Control?
It stands for Centers for Disease Control. Okay, so we know that. Not everybody knew that, right? Did everybody know that? I don't think everybody knows that. I think we know, but not everybody knows. So it's good when you have an acronym to say it out. Okay, now what does the Center for Disease Control do? Who are they? Where do they come from? What are they about?
Georgia, I think.
Are they a United States agency or are they a global agency?
United States.
So they're a United States, a U.S. government, right? They're the governmental agency, wouldn't you say? Preventing the spread
of diseases.
The spread of disease, yeah. They're doing research, they're offering insight. So if I said, according to a report from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, a U.S. governmental agency protecting us from the spread of disease, they state, would that tell you enough about them to trust that information?
Yes.
Does that qualify the source? Mm-hmm. It does. It might be helpful for me to include the date because is there a big difference between what was happening in 2016 versus what's happening in 2020?
Yes, new information has arisen.
Absolutely. So in a 2020 report, or even better, if you could date it like in a July 1st report, 2020.
Quick
report.
question.
Sure.
Do our citing have to be in MLA format for our presentations?
So your works cited page needs to be in MLA citation style, just like the example outline. And you probably want to paste a copy of that to your visual aid. The last slide of your visual aid, you probably want to paste a copy of your MLA citation page. But you don't have to incorporate citations at the bottom of the, like there's no footer in your, is that what you mean in the visual aid? And when you cite your sources verbally, that's enough in terms of research. So I want to hear the verbal citations. The more qualifications you can offer, the better. Okay, let me ask you this. Who is PETA?
People for ethical treatment of animals, not against.
Okay. What do you know about PETA? Like who are they? What do they do? Anybody?
I'm a little torn on this because I feel like there's a portion that, and I could be wrong, but a portion that are very for the ethical treatment of animals, but they're not well versed in the agricultural raising animals, so they don't have a whole lot of understanding of how animals are raised, so they're not, in a sense, you know, the fact that we should not be eating animals, but if we treat them okay and we treat them well, that is ethical, you know what I mean, rather than, no, don't eat honey because it hurts bees. No, it doesn't. Bees make honey. That's a byproduct of them building their combs. You know, honey does not hurt bees. Taking honey, it's actually clearing out their hives and giving them more space and more ventilation.
Okay. You're making a really good point about this source. I'll tell you why. Okay, every source that we find is going to be biased. Is the Center for Disease Control biased? Is there some bias in that? Yes, it's a United States governmental agency. They're going to be biased towards the United States and how they protect the United States and how they disseminate that information globally. What about the organization WHO? Does anybody know who that is?
Yes, they're very biased.
They're the World Health Organization, right? And they're going to have a more global position. Now, if I told you they were a global organization preventing the spread of disease, you're going to see them differently than a U.S. governmental agency. Now, when I say bias, bias isn't bad. Okay, bias isn't bad. It's just good for us as an audience to discern that that bias exists. So what Samantha's acknowledging is that PETA has a specific type of bias. And maybe it's not always the most knowledgeable type of bias. They are really preventing animals from even being used by humans in any way. In fact, they don't even want us to have pets. So it's important sometimes that we know the bias. So if we were able to, can somebody go to the About Us and find out a little bit more about PETA? Will somebody check that out real quick for me? And then will
in
somebody,
2018 they had a like 72% euthanization rate, and they like killed majority of the animals they saved.
so we know that there's a bias. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use PETA for insight. It would be just like using the NRA. Do you know that the NRA has a bias? The National Rifle Association, what's their bias? What are they trying to do? If you go to the About Us, you find out what their mission is, you'll find out what they're trying to do. And if you find out what they're trying to do, you know what their bias is. Now, one thing I want you guys to realize, it's not going to always be clear with every source. And you don't have to tell your audience everything there is to know, but you want to give them enough information in order for them to see that the source is qualified for the information. And telling us who the CDC is and telling us a little bit more about that gives the audience the chance to make a decision based on the information you've presented. Are you with me? So what you want to do is you want to fully qualify the source enough for the audience so they know that it's a credible source, it's a trustworthy source, that the information you're presenting should come from that source. What about the Washington Post? Who's the Washington Post? What do you know about the Washington Post?
They're a journalism website.
Okay,
And
yeah, they're a newspaper, right? They're a newspaper. Does anybody know who the Huffington Post is?
Mhm.
What are they?
Also a newspaper.
Okay. Do you know which is a more reliable organization, the Washington Post or the Huffington Post? No, you don't. It's up to the speaker to tell you enough about the source to know that the source is reliable. I can tell you, as a student checked the Washington Post last class, it's from 1879. Does that help you feel like it's a more reliable resource? They've been in publication since 1879? Okay, that helps, right? That helps. You think, okay, that's a well-established publication. The Huffington Post started as a blog. They are a well-established publication now. We don't know whether they're right-leaning or left-leaning just based on the information provided. Same thing goes with the Washington Post. We don't know if they're right-leaning or left-leaning. You don't always have to give them every little bit of information, but it's important for you as a speaker to know and to be able to discern what kind of information you're sharing. So it's up to you to find out the research, but I do want you to know that at the very least, you want to qualify your source. You want to make sure you're not presenting an acronym. You want to tell us the type of source that it is, if it's a journalist site, or if it's a tweet, or if it's a textbook, or if it's a governmental organization. You want to tell us that at the very least, and you want to date the source if possible, because information changes every day. So if you can incorporate all of those things, then you probably have a really good source citation. There's a lot that you don't know about the source based on that information, but it is up to you to find out. Who checked out PETA for me? Anybody? What is PETA, Sarah? What did they say they are About Us?
I did. Their About Us is a little lengthy, but it basically says their mission statement: people for the ethical treatment of animals, PETA, largest animal rights organization in the world, more than 6.5 million members and supporters. PETA opposes speciesism, a human supremacist worldview, and it goes on, yada, yada, yada.
So that's even hard to decipher, right? So, you know, their mission statement might tell you a little bit more, but you'd have to research all of that to understand what their bias is. So we know, though, as Samantha noted, I think Cody noted, that they're a radical organization, and they tend to go to the extremism side. It doesn't mean they do bad things. There might still be some really good things to offer from that research, but you want to give your audience the chance to decipher or determine that. You guys with me? Okay, we'll talk more about citing sources, but when you cite your sources, I want you guys to think about the example that's going to come up when we watch this speech. Now it's time to evaluate a speech, okay? We're going to evaluate the speech using the sheet that you have. So if you don't have the sheet printed, it's fine, take notes so you can go back and complete the sheet. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind is that you do want to try to count the sources. So as you're listening to this speech, it's going to have lots and lots of sources. In fact, I'm going to tell you just right now, it's got more than 3. I would like for you to see if you can count the sources that you hear. One thing to do for that is to just tally them. You know how when you're bowling and you do the little lines, and when you get to the 4th one, you cross over that line till you have 5? That might be a good way to do it. But I'm going to see if you guys can count how many sources you hear the speaker cite verbally in the speech. We're going to give Pete the benefit of the doubt and think that he's improved this version, and so we'll have a little bit of time for feedback. But definitely be keeping track of what you're hearing so you can complete this assignment. And this is a 7-minute speech. He's dressed up this time.
Imagine your mouth
captures your
like
attention.
wildfire. Your eyes squirting out uncontrollable tears, and your face red and sweating profusely. Are you sick? No, you just took a bite of a screaming hot chili pepper. Congratulations. You're partaking in a worldwide tradition that has been spicing up lives and diets for thousands of years. My own desire for spicy meals led me to investigate why I get red in the face and salivate over the mere thought of eating a spicy chili.
His credibility.
In the process, I've discovered there's a lot more to chili peppers than I'd ever imagined. Today, I'd like to share with you what I've learned about the history of chili peppers, why they can be so spicy, what to do if you eat a too hot pepper, and some of the ways chili peppers are used other than in foods.
That's 4 main points.
The chili pepper has a long and fascinating history. Its scientific name is capsicum. Now, this is different than the common black pepper you have on your dining room table, whose scientific name is Piper nigrum. Black pepper was first cultivated in Asia, and it was prized in the West as early as the Roman Empire. In contrast, the chili pepper originated more than 5,000 years ago in South America, near what is today Bolivia and Brazil. Over time, it spread to Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. But it wasn't until Columbus came in the 1490s that the chili pepper became known to the rest of the world. As stated in the Cambridge World History of Food, within 50 years after Columbus returned to Spain with sample plants, chili peppers could be found growing in coastal areas from Africa to Asia. From there, they spread inland until they had taken hold of the taste buds of people around the globe. Today, they're most widely used in Mexico, Central and South America, Africa, Asia, the Balkans, and the United States. Carolyn Dilley and Susan Belsinger, authors of the Chili Pepper book, estimate that 25% of the world's adult population uses chili peppers as a part of their daily diet. Now that we know a little bit about the history of chili peppers,
transition.
Let's see why they can put such a fire in our belly. The pleasure and pain involved in eating chili pepper comes from a chemical called capsaicin. Capsaicin is concentrated in the pepper's veins and seeds, pictured here. To enjoy the flavor of chili pepper without burning your stomach or mouth, avoid the veins and seeds when cooking or eating them. P.W. Bosley tells us in the book, Spices, Herbs, and Edible Fungi, that chili pepper intensity is measured in 2 ways. The first was developed by Wilbur L. Scoville in 1912. This method uses trained testers to measure chili peppers in Scoville heat units. These range from 0 to 300,000. According to Boslin, this test is subjective because it relies on the individual tester's sensitivity to capsaicin. The second, more widely used test is called the High Performance Liquid Chromatography Test, more commonly known as HPLC. This is also measured in Scoville heat units, but it's more objective. The chili pods are dried and ground, and then the chemicals responsible for the heat are analyzed and rated according to pungency. The hottest pepper on record is the deceptively small and unimposing orange habanero pepper. It's been rated as high as 300,000 Scoville heat units, and it's so powerful that some people have an allergic reaction just by touching it, which is why I'm holding it by the stem. The mildest pepper is the standard green bell, which you see at the grocery store every day. It's been rated at 0 Scoville heat units. If you eat an orange habanero pepper, it's important to know how to deal with the burning state.
The transition.
Whatever you do, do not rinse your mouth with water. Dave DeWitt, in the Chili Pepper Encyclopedia, tells us capsaicin is not soluble in water. And even if you drink a gallon of ice water, it's not going to help. According to the Chili Pepper Institute at New Mexico State University, the best solution is to consume a dairy product such as milk or yogurt, which contain a substance that strips away capsaicin from the interior cells of your mouth. This is why some hot foods like Indian foods are served with yogurt sauce. Now, if you burn your skin, the Institute recommends cleaning the area with rubbing alcohol and then soaking it with milk. Above all, remember two things. First, always wear gloves when you cut a hot pepper such as a habanero. Second, never rub your eyes when working with hot chili peppers. Although chili peppers are prized above all for the flavor they add to food, they have other benefits as well. Pepper sprays have become a standard weapon for the personal protection of individuals and law enforcement agents. The New York Times reports sales of pepper sprays have risen steadily and show no sign of slowing. Chili peppers are also valued for their medicinal properties. According to Jack Chalm, author of the Nutrition Reporter, there have been more than 1,300 medical studies on capsaicin, the active ingredient in chili peppers. Moderate doses have been proven to aid digestion, reduce hypertension, improve circulation, and help dissolve blood clots. Preliminary research by Professor Kenji Okajima at Japan's Kumamoto University School of Medicine suggests that a combination of chili peppers and soybeans can promote hair growth and might hold promise as a cure for baldness. In closing, it's difficult to imagine our lives without the spice added by chili peppers. From their origin in South America to their current popularity around the world, peppers have been used not only to flavor our food, but also to improve our health and personal safety. While it remains to be seen whether or not chili peppers can actually cure baldness, we can be sure this ancient plant will continue to find new uses in our modern age.
All right, and the applause of the audience. All right, so what do you think? Does he do a better job this time?
Really great. Good job.
Good job. He's overtime. He's overtime at 6:55, so he went overtime. I would have stopped him at 6:30, so he wouldn't have gotten to his conclusion, which would have been a problem. He would have lost points for the conclusion. But he did make it to 7 minutes for that speech, and I think he told us a whole lot in that time. Out of curiosity, how many sources did he have? How'd you guys do?
8.
8.
Anybody get a different one?
More than 3, less than 10.
I got 7.
Okay, so 7. I've got 8. I've got 8. So I wrote them down. So Cambridge World History of Food, Carolyn Dilly, and Susan Belsinger, the chili pepper book. P.W. Boslin, Spices, Herbs, and Edible Fungi. Dave DeWitt, the Chili Pepper Encyclopedia. I didn't even know they had one of those. And this one is really baffling to me. New Mexico State University's Chili Pepper Institute. What? Wow. New York Times, which I wish you would have dated that at the very least. Jack Chalm's Nutrition Reporter. Professor Benji Okajima, Japan's Kumamoto University. That's about the baldness, by the way. So there were 8, but he does reference 2 of those sources again twice. So if you had 10, you would have been accurate in that as well, because he does reference them a couple times as well. Lots and lots of sources. Did you feel like it took away from the message?
Of this boss. Okay. This
A little
is
bit.
Well, it's not quite. We still got to get to the boss. I lost my last relic, so I've been roughing it without a relic on my ridiculous hardcore playthrough. It's real rough and slow.
Is that me?
No.
I'm like,
I think
who's
it's
watching
Cody.
YouTube videos? Is that me?
British. What's that?
It sure sounds like me. I don't know. Because my son watches so many YouTube videos. I don't know if that was me or not, but somebody's watching YouTube if not. Sorry about that. Anyway, so but really quick to wrap it up because we're almost at the end. I want to hear just really quick what you all thought about this speech. How do you think he did?
Well prepared.
Thought he did good.
Good eye contact this time? Better use of the notes?
I didn't count one so he did a lot better on the fillers.
Did he pronounce his words right?
Definitely.
Okay, what about eye contact? Does he make an eye contact 65 to 75% of the speech? That's what you guys are going for. Better eye contact. Is he perfect as a speaker? No, he's not perfect. But I think he did well in terms of, connecting with us. I wish he would have stepped away from the podium. I wish he was more animated. I wish he was a little bit more intentional about engaging us. I'm worried because I think, who's doing the speech on peppers?
Chad.
So Chad, why don't you were doing hot sauce? He's not current. The habanero is not the hottest pepper.
All my notes. No, he hit all my. I got to change my subject. He took
Oh no!
magic out of it. He did. Like the whole thing about the Scoville and how it could be used not just for flavor but practical uses and everything.
You could take it from what we already know, and go even
I'll
further.
take from the shock appeal my introduction. I gotta now loop everybody. Hey, be interested in part 2 of this. No, I'll think of something.
I feel bad.
I'll be
for you. I'm
ready.
sorry, I didn't mean to
Still have
see
the
you
same
defender.
date and everything.
I have an idea for him though.
What?
I have an idea for your speech.
A new subject?
No. For the pepper thing, but
okay.
I don't want to tell you on here, so that
okay.
It ruins the creativity.
Got you.
You two could talk. Okay. So just really quick, so I can let you get off because I'm sure you have other things to do. But really quick, how many of you would give him a D? He got a D. You gave him a D. For Pete, didn't get a D. Okay. Did Pete get a C? Who gave him a C? Who gave him a B? Okay. All right. And who gives him an A? He would have got an A. He did everything he's supposed to do according to the rubric. He captured our attention. He established his credibility. He created common ground. He previewed his main points. He transitioned to each of his main points. He cited all his sources. He concluded in conclusion, and he gave us a nice summary, and he left us with a final thought, and he was making good eye contact and using gesture and pace well. I know there's some things he could have done better. Like Chad, he could totally have invested some time in talking about some hot sauces and maybe even, I don't know, some pop culture references. He could have had some more fun with us. I felt like it was sort of bland. He could have gone there, but he didn't. But doesn't mean he didn't score well. He got a great grade. He got an A, and he worked hard. I could tell he worked hard and prepared well. All right, so rehearse well. I promise it'll pay off. Whew. Okay, at least 6 times all the way through with your presentation aid out loud. Don't try to read it to memorize it. That's not going to work. And don't try to memorize it. That's not going to work, okay? Use your notes well. You must have note cards or a note page. You can't use a screen. So keep that in mind. And you're going to have to step away from your computer. So you're not going to be real close to your screen anyways. Any questions for me? I'm here if you need me. No panicking allowed. You got to present, all right? Just get it over with. If you're presenting on Tuesday, just do it. Just get it over with. And if you need me, let me know, okay? You all have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Don't forget to turn that in.
Okay. Chad, I sent you an email.
All right, I was just about to what else to get out. How'd you send me an email?
It's just through Canvas.
Okay, right on.
Yep.
Thank you. I'll check that out right now.
I'm sticking around. I'll stick around for you, Sam.
Thank you.
Chad, if you have trouble, please let me know. Hey, Alex.
Hi, I was wondering, where do I turn in my speech topic and like the date?
Just send me a message in Canvas and I'll update it. What's your topic?
I don't know. I've been trying to think about it. I'm stuck between weightlifting and cosplay.
Okay. So Sam, what do you think? Weightlifting or cosplay?
Ooh, Alex, what's more interesting to you?
I have a passion for weightlifting, but I feel like cosplay might have a little bit more color to it.
Cosplay would probably have some more color to it, and it's a really wide variety topic. So I think you could touch on a lot more bases. Weightlifting is really interesting also, but there's maybe it's you could go into the history of it, how it's changed and evolved over the years. Where cosplay has been really like relatively new. So, but like I said, that's a pretty wide topic. So really either way, I think you can do well in either one.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I try to give everybody a chance to get some feedback from each other, and I think it's better when you know who your audience is. But both topics are fine. If you want to shoot me a message in Canvas, and I think the only date left is the August 3rd date, or I'm not August 3rd, I'm sorry, so we're starting on the 14th, so the 16th to 21st might be the only date, but whatever date's left on that announcement, if you could just look for me, because I don't have it in front of me. So just let me know.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, you got it. Take care.
Yeah, y'all have a good day.
You too. I had a quick question about, are we doing I'm sorry, I had to do with real rooms to go really quick, but are we doing the evaluation on the refined one or the first one?
The improved version, the one we watched together. So okay. You can just try to get that done sooner so you don't have to worry about it, you know.
Yeah.
But don't worry, don't labor over it. You know what I mean? That's just short answers for the bottom response is fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
See you in English, Chad.
See you later. I heard you say my name as I exited the video.
I just wanted to help you if you needed help picking a topic. I honestly think you could still do it, and you could still talk about Scoville heat. Now that we have a little bit of understanding, you can even say, as we learned last week, you know, this is what Scoville heat units are, because believe me, people will forget. I've seen that speech. I'll be honest, I've seen that speech probably 200 times, and there's still things I take from it every time I watch it. So I wouldn't let that keep you from doing the topic.
No, it's like, and I came up with that topic so quickly. Two topics were in such a bit. It will be no problem coming with a new topic. I just feel like he took my excitement out of it. It's like I don't even want to research it. He put in so many references. You know, I don't even want.
That's fine.
So let alone risking boring the class too. I will still be on time. I will. It'll be a topic that will still be appropriate and everything too. I just. And if I come up with a new idea, then I'll still stick with it. I don't know. I just feel like completely deflated.
Well, don't let it bother you that much, but definitely go back and look at the topics that people have chosen so you don't choose the same topic as somebody else. And if you have any questions at all, please let me know.
Will do. Thank you so much, Ms. Upchurch.
Okay,
have a good rest of your day.